In life, there are always three main activities unfolding. One is to create, the second is to destroy or let go, and the third is to sustain. When I turn on the light, I am destroying the darkness. And then what is required to keep the light on? Each of us aspires to create that which is peaceful, happy, harmonious, adds quality to our life. And we want to let go of what is harmful, painful, sorrowful. And be able to sustain that peace, happiness, and harmony for as long as possible. What is required from me to perform accurately these three aspects? To be able to create that which adds quality, let go of that which diminishes, and sustain what is created. Creation, that is change, depends on seeing things in a different way. Realization. In fact, all three acts depend on realization, seeing things in a different way. This is the foundation of transformation. Creation, destruction, and sustenance. This is transformation. The moment I realize, see things in a different way, understand, I've changed. As if I can't go back, the old is destroyed. And because there is that power of understanding, I can sustain the change. It is when I don't understand that change is short-lived. I might use force, even violence, to try to maintain that change, call it discipline. It will still be short-lived. Something deep has to shift inside for true transformation. Creation, destruction, sustenance, all three are the children of realization, new understanding. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. Tonight's session is sustainable change. And I was listening to the commentary and also just thinking about this topic quite a bit in the last few weeks. And it even came up today, actually, just where I was. And there seems to be this challenge in terms of these three aspects. So I was just wondering, just in terms of change, just listening to the commentary, do you feel that when things naturally happen, all three are just naturally going to be there? But if we're trying to force change, that we're just not consistent for all of those aspects to be there? Because sometimes they'll mention that create something, you don't know how to sustain it, or you're trying to make change, but you haven't created anything new, et cetera, et cetera.
Om Shanti. I guess the suggestion is that we can't actually even use the word change unless all three of those are present. So to even realize that those three things are required to say that there's actually been a change, we definitely focus just on one a lot of times, which is the whole creating something new. But the understanding that that's going to mean letting go of something may not be fully realized. And also that I'm not just trying to run this, I'm going to have to sustain what I create. So what, the power is, some kind of power is going to be required. I think we're very excited about the idea of newness, and we have very, sort of almost a fast food mentality, very short term, and not realize that what else is involved, that all three of these actually are present to truly use the word change?
It's maybe a very broad question, but it's just while you're sharing, I was just thinking about purity and change. And I was wondering if you could perhaps maybe just share briefly what purity means in the context, Raja Yoga, spirituality, and what role does purity play in sustainable change?
Creativity actually demands purity. So it definitely is key. And where there is purity, that which is not pure automatically will, so almost, if you will, self-destruct. um, as an example, um, when you are around an infant, a very innocent being, there's certain behaviors that feel appropriate and some that we actually would prefer not to do, which may have come very naturally in other circumstances, but there it just, we let it go. So purity is a power, and it very automatically. So in other words, if I just focused on purity, I would automatically get all three aspects. There would automatically be creativity. Automatically, I would let go of that which is not pure, not quality, and because it's a power, as long as I'm able to keep that purity going, then I'll be able to sustain that change. And our understanding of purity is obviously nothing foreign mixed in, but it's a very deep, deep experience of contentment and fulfillment within the self that is independent, detached from anything external to the self. So these three aspects of value, detachment, and contentment kind of mix together to form this state known as purity.
Would then just change just be, I guess you can say, like just a product of purity versus, oh, okay, I want change, so let me, well, I don't know if that sounds right. Like, okay, let me just see what the ingredients of purity is so that I can make that kind of change happen. Or is it just that, what does purity mean to me? What is my relationship with it? The healthier it is, that change just happens naturally.
I think, again, it's to look at what's inspiring change. When everything is perfect, we actually don't care about change. So, in a perfect world, heaven, paradise, utopia, no one's focusing on change. No one's motivated to change. Everything's fantastic. So, there's something in us that's motivating change when things are not perfect. Now, we think the source of the problem is outside. So we spend a lot of time on trying to change things outside. But what spirituality teaches us, or maybe we wouldn't need spirituality if we were just really honest with ourselves, we would be able to feel ultimately at the very, very core of what's motivating is something's not sitting comfortably in my conscience. It's something inside of me. And this almost desire to clean things up, to a longing for a different way of living that is actually based on something inside. So really being at peace with the self. So it's a kind of purification, a seeking of purification. It is said that, that what God hears when we're crying for change is purify me. That's what he hears. Now, no one's going to say I'm crying out, purify me. But deep down inside, that's actually what we are longing for. We're crying, for a clean heart, a clear conscience, an inner state of peace, just things really harmonious inside. The problem isn't outside, because at the end of the day, we eventually have to realize that we've created whatever is going on outside. So it's actually a longing for purity is the impetus for change if we really are honest with ourselves. So, yeah, it has a lot to do with change.
It's just quite interesting because I was reflecting on, and it just came up during your earlier part of sharing about purity, just came to mind because it does, it's funny you're sharing that, in a perfect world, nobody wants change if everything felt perfect. But everyone is craving for change, and it doesn't matter what kind of context. And we're like, how can we make this better? Why is it we can't sustain this? So is it that maybe we're distracted by these details and, maybe we're not actually looking at the seed, or is it even possible in a context like a fitness studio or in the context of its New Year's resolutions, or it's like, a company wants to change their vision or their mission? Is it that, just is change really always a spiritual thing and everything else that we're doing are just perhaps maybe just temporary things of wanting change? And it's always something much more deeper than that.
If we were to look at the example of a tree, and originally the tree is a sapling, very beautiful, and we just, it just keeps growing and it's wonderful and we enjoy it. Eventually, there seems to come a state where parts of it start to decay or there's overgrowth, and we start to prune the tree, and yet it still continues to have problems. So we have that saying, let's get to the root of the problem. So the first thing, I guess, about change, whether it's individual or organizational, is, am I even changing at the right level? Am I just pruning the tree and wondering why are this decay still coming back? Not realizing that the reason the tree is having challenges is because of something at the root. Am I able to take some time to get to the root of the problem? Or rather than just launching into change at a very superficial level, which will never really be sustainable. I haven't really realized what the source of the problem is, and it will have something to do with, yes, spirituality, specifically purity.
In the situations or contexts when you hear individuals who suddenly stop smoking, or suddenly, I knew somebody I met on the plane on the way back from the spiritual headquarters a few years ago. He just wanted to lose weight, so he started running, and he started running and started doing 1 kilometers, 4 kilometers, doing marathons. He took a flight all the way from India to New York for that well-known marathon that's happening out there. But you're hearing about these changes out there. Is that again taking the same ingredients? There must be something pure in it, or that's just still possible that you can make little changes and use one of those 3 ingredients. Talking about creation, sustaining, and destroying.
Especially when you get to the sustenance piece, if the change hasn't been at the deepest level, obstacles will come, and I won't be able, because ultimately what we care about is being peaceful and happy. And so if I haven't made a change at the deepest level, so in your example, let's say he's doing a race and one day he breaks his leg. If his peace and happiness was based on changing at that level, this activity level, and then that no longer an obstacle or challenge comes, then his peace and happiness is no longer sustained because it was happening not really at the deepest level, which is why, again, we say spiritual, something very deep inside that is impervious, that is able to overcome obstacles or protected from obstacles and challenges. So, again, have I taken the time? I remember once I was in a workshop and the facilitator asked for a volunteer. And so a young woman volunteered to be basically to go through a question process. And she was asked, what are you working on lately? What project are you working on lately in your life? And she said something about one of these martial arts she's training in that's offered in the Olympics. I'm not sure which one. So she's training to compete in the Olympics in this particular sport. And the facilitator only did one thing. She kept asking the word, why? So she asked her, well, why? And she's like, because, I like this sport and I'd like to be able to develop myself as much as why? Well, because, I'd like to show that it's possible to compete in the sport without taking any drugs. Why? She just kept asking why. And you could see she was drilling down the question why until she get to the seed. And at the end of the day, the seed was because then I'll be happy. So what spirituality does is cuts to the chase. It gets right to the seed of happiness, which is purity. So really that might be the ultimate change, whatever's going on in my life. If I just focus on becoming more authentic, like more at peace with myself, more aware of who I am and aligned with that, that might be the deepest change I could make that would actually mean I'm not having to prune or just focus on one branch or the other that may run into obstacles.
It's so interesting you sharing that. And it seems to be connected to something that I hear often. And I wouldn't have made that connection until you shared about this deepest seed that souls sometimes grapple with spirituality feeling relevant. So they're like, oh, okay, so if all I want, the deepest thing is being pure, then how am I supposed to function at work? How am I supposed to, does change ever need to happen? Do things ever need to improve? Or do I just sort of leave things the way they are, turn into chaos, or I leave my responsibilities? Perhaps they can't see, or we all can't see clearly how a seed like that can be relevant to life.
So obviously, I want this to sound insulting. So let's use a safe example. So I remember quite a few months ago, we had an in service for the personal trainers, and the coordinator for the trainers brought in. Often we do little mini workshops, and this one was on rowing, how to use the indoor rowing machines, the technique to row properly. And someone was brought in, and she trains national rowers and really has exceptional rowing technique. And it was really fascinating for all of us because um, it became very clear there are two ways to row. One is wrong and the other is right. And when you do it the wrong way, it's very inefficient and exhausting. But you could be thinking, oh man, I've got things going on. I'm working out. I am rowing. I have it going on. I am rowing. I am rowing. And I'm rowing in a very inefficient way. I'm not getting the most out of it. Now, to use a different system or method doesn't mean I'm not rowing anymore. I'm rowing in a different way. It just happens to be more efficient, more productive. So when I hear that spirituality isn't relevant, I don't know if it's understood what spirituality is. It's really just a different method or way of living. I'm still living, but I'm just like I was still rowing, but now I'm using completely inaccurate way of rowing, which is happy and efficient and peaceful. It's still relevant. It's going to feel very awkward. I'm not going to lie to you. It felt very awkward. So spirituality is just a different way of living my life. Now, the reason I say I don't want to insult, because the obvious thing that's being suggested here is that if the change I'm making is more purity, more authenticity, that would suggest that I am living in an inauthentic way, which I know sounds insulting. So I will say, just for myself, this was the discovery I made for myself that I wasn't really being authentic. To say learning how to be authentic, which is what spirituality does, isn't relevant to my day to day life, it didn't make sense to me. It's very relevant. It's all about quality of life. I still pay bills, I still work, but now I'm trying to be more authentic because that authenticity is quality of life. Otherwise, it's all quantity of life. All I've got is quantity of life going on, and I'm confusing that with quality of life.
So we started late, but yeah, we started late. It's just yes, we never do. So it's quite interesting because, and then we may actually be distracted by these other things that we're pruning and not realize that that's the issue. Because when you at first were sharing, I was using the example of running, and you were saying, but what's driving my peace and happiness? And I can imagine the soul saying, I broke my leg. I don't care about me trying to get back on the race. But I feel like what you're sharing is that if they're not clear of where they're getting their peace and happiness, the changes that they're making could be connected to something that's constantly ever changing. And that's really the issue, is that if the seed of was at the core in terms of purity, in terms of my sense of self, what is happiness and peace, then it's not really relevant how things unfold about details. That's what I'm understanding from you, Sharon.
Yeah, especially when it comes to that sustainability piece. If it's so conditional on things that I often can't even control, if the change I'm making is so conditional on someone or something outside of myself, outside of my control, then you can see that it's going to be very fragile when it comes to the issue of sustainability.
Sneaking in one last question. um, Purity versus desires, limited desires. You had given an example one time, because like if it was purity, things should roll out in a certain way, would it? You had given this example about Daddy Janky. You were asked to be in this program. She was on stage, and this program, I think, was dedicated to her. I can't remember. There was little planning happening. You and another soul had to do some sort of, I'm not sure, performance on the stage, and certain things had to coordinate in a certain way. And there was a projector screen, and your silhouettes were supposed to be somehow in sync, or maybe it wasn't intentional to be synchronized with images that were on the screen. And there was no planning. And you said at the end, it turned out to be this beautifully orchestrated um, production. And you felt like as if you witnessed that it was as if it was the purity of Daddy Janky that made things happen. How can a soul look at that, or think that, or feel that, God would just really want to, just share how appreciated the soul is and everything floats so beautifully? What can a soul do with that? Because we're so outcome oriented that sometimes we hear something like that and they're constantly looking at situations like, oh, that wasn't successful. Then there must have been bad or not pure intentions. We're not being able to gauge what does it mean, something sustainable then.
The interesting thing about a seed is that it's pretty invisible, it's underground. So when it came to the program that you're describing, yeah, it was incredible, even on the physical level, how things managed to work out despite ourselves, really. But what I really felt privileged to witness as well was the actual seed, which is the bit that everyone takes away, the experience from the seed. There was just this beautiful vibe that, yes, allowed the physical things to arrange themselves, but that's very short term. What we say imperishable, what actually imprinted on everyone involved was this vibe, this invisible vibe. So I know I've been in situations where, say, teaching a fitness class, and it's a complete disaster. It's really bad. Um, but if I'm able to keep my attitude in a pure place, so very good feelings towards myself, very good feelings towards the participants, the seeming outcome is actually quite bad. The class was quite bad, but the invisible piece, that seed of purity, if that's there, it's incredible. At the end of the class, those will say, that was a great class. And I know it wasn't. At the physical level, it was not. But there's something so imperishable and so overriding about that seed. And so that's why, whatever, we're even told, things may look kind of strange on the surface, but if I have sincerely taken care of that seed of purity, if I've kept that self respect and respect for others intact, in time, something very beautiful, benevolent will emerge. So, complete trust in that seed, even though it's often invisible.
Thank you, Junie. We're so over time. I'll hand the mic back to you and you can do what you wish.
Sorry. Taking just a few minutes to care for my own seed of change. And that change actually isn't a change into something new. It's a return to the original. It is renewal. I turn inwards. The feeling of going underground. There's the me that I present to the outer world, a bit like an image. And then there's me here inside. No masks, no show. Nothing actually even to do with the physical body. Me, the being, a constellation of qualities, character, the one who loves peace, loves truth, loves love. That me. Do I take time at all during the day to nurture and nourish and water this seed of myself? Acknowledge myself as a spiritual being, not just a human doing, a human being. Celebrate the wonder of the self as a soul. Feel at peace with the self, content for absolutely no reason. Content to just be. This is caring for the seed. It makes life so much easier. In fact, it can make magic happen. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Sister Junie. Thank you for those who joined online. Just wanted souls to save the date for the next Learn About Meditation happening next Saturday, November 23rd, 12:15 to 1:30. And we won't have any Raja Yoga courses offered in December just because it's a tricky time with Christmas. However, is it too early to say to save the date for our New Year's New Year's Eve program is actually happening on December 29th. And it's going to be earlier it's like sort of like a late afternoon. So hopefully it makes it easier for souls to be able to get to their next destination, even if that is dinner. And so that's quite a while to wait, but that would be the next big event that's happening aside from the World Meditation Hours. And so please visit the website for other drop-in sessions such as this or evening meditations online. Thank you for joining. Om Shanti.